Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about the fall of Rome. Now this is obviously a huge topic. It's been grappled with by many historians. So what I'm going to do to simplify this is to give you context and significance first. And then I'm simply going to go through a list of factors that have been raised by various historians over the centuries that attributed to the fall of Rome. And you can pick the ones that you think are most important. It's kind of a smorgasbord of factors here. Of course, the fall of Rome doesn't happen suddenly. It's something it's gradual. It takes place over a long period of time. And many of these factors are systemic. They're within the empire itself. It's not something that suddenly happens. It's a long-term trend. So, context first. This is the shift of European organization from the Roman Empire to a fragmented feudalism that's going to emerge after the fall of the Western Empire. Significance, this ends the sort of centralized authority that the Romans imposed over the Mediterranean basin, and especially over the western half of the empire. You remember the eastern half of the empire will survive. It will go under the name of the Byzantine Empire, and it will last for another 1,000 years. But the Western Empire is going to fragment and disintegrate into what we call feudalism. The first factor that I'm going to mention here, the traditional date for the fall of Rome is the 4th of September, 476. Here, the last Western emperor is deposed by invading barbarians. So this is sort of the official date in the history books that we can point to. But I think it's strictly for academic purposes. The deterioration of Rome had begun before, and institutions of the empire will continue after this date. Some historians point to the death of Justinian in 565. This was the last emperor who sought to bring the empire back together, to reestablish it as it had been. After Justinian's death, the western part of the empire will be inevitably cut loose. Some historians have pointed to the rise of Islam in 632. Islam is going to rapidly expand northward and put pressure on the empire, both east and west. In fact, of course, the cause of the Crusades is the clash between Islam and the Byzantine Empire in the east. Roman legions, according to one historian, are increasingly filled with German mercenaries. I think one of the factors that had made the Roman army so powerful over the centuries is that it was comprised of Roman citizens who had a stake in the outcome of battle. Increasingly, though, the legions are made up of mercenaries. And of course, mercenaries don't have a stake in the outcome of battle other than getting paid. So this is a weakness in the military institutions of Rome. Other historians have pointed to the shift of the Roman bureaucracy. Constantine, of course, moves the capital of the empire from Rome to a city on the Bosporus Strait in what today we would call Turkey. This, of course, was the old Greek city of Byzantium. Constantine will rename it. It'll become Constantinople, Constantine City. And this will remain this way until the Muslims conquer it. I think in 1458, it seems like is the date that comes to mind. And then at that point, Constantinople will be renamed again, and it will become Istanbul. Other historians have pointed to corruption within the elite, a lack of civic virtue among the Roman nobility. And of course, Gibbon, in his Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, placed a good deal of blame on the Christian faith. He said that people became less and less concerned about this mortal life and became more and more concerned about the afterlife, and that Christianity did not meld well with earlier Roman values and virtues of individuality and of excellence, and that Christianity was a weakening factor within the Roman people. And of course, all historians point to the sort of chronic pressure put along the Roman periphery by barbarian tribes, Central European Germanic tribes. Persia puts pressure on the Roman Empire in the east, the Turks, and of course Arabs, Islamic Arabs from the Arabian Peninsula. One historian has pointed to the depopulation of Italy. There is a plague that severely depopulates the peninsula. And then, of course, the move of the capital to Constantinople takes the rather large Roman bureaucracy with it. Other historians have pointed to the poor leadership that ensues as we move further and further through the centuries, that the quality of leadership of Rome is diminished. Economic historians have pointed to a scarcity of gold. They've pointed to an inflated currency. Economic historians have pointed to the Roman economy as becoming increasingly one of plunder instead of production. So just a wide variety of factors here. Other economic historians have pointed to excessive tax collection, which drives many farmers into destitution where they lose their farms. An economy based on slave labor increasingly. So you can see that many of these factors are systemic. They become part of the empire. In the West, of course, is the rise of feudalism. Increasingly, the nobility establish a certain independence, a certain autonomy, where they create these great estates with slaves and with tenant farmers, with vassals, knights that are beholden to the local nobleman instead of the empire. So these are common factors that have been presented to try to explain the fall of the Roman Empire. Of course, the empire itself is probably its greatest significance is that it provides unification for the entire Mediterranean basin, extending from Britain in the north to the Jordan River, or even beyond to Mesopotamia in the east, to the Atlantic in the west, the entire North African rim. The Romans imposed a system of government and values and trade over this vast area, and now we see the collapse of the Roman Empire, and that unification provided by Rome will obviously disappear. So I'll stop there, and we'll pick it up next time. Thank you.